Buckle your seatbelts. Here we go. We're going for a real ride this morning because it's always a hoot to have in the house, or at least within shooting distance of the house. Dr. Kevin Leman's with us today, and he certainly needs no introduction. He's been here in the Valley. We've had him in a fishing boat. He's a cool dude, and he writes books. And his latest one, What a Difference a Mom Can Make, is now a bestseller, just absolutely jumping off the shelf. There's a picture of it there on the screen, and let me encourage you to get a copy of that. By the way, we do have some of his other books here we're going to give away. Have a New Husband by Friday. We're going to give 2 of those away coming up here in about 10 minutes, so you'll be listening. Kevin, what a delight to have you, friend.
Hey, good to be back. When you say within shooting distance, you know, you're quite an outdoorsman. That makes me a little nervous.
You know, did you know that today is National Husband Make Dinner Day? So I just want to know, is that really kind of a segue for Sex Begins in the Kitchen?
Yeah, that could do a lot for wok cookery, it seems to me. Well, you know, people ought to know this about me. I know a lot of people are familiar with me up in the Northwest, but, you know, Sandy and I have been married for 45 years in a row, and we're still discovering things about marriage that make marriage fun. But as you know, this is book 41, and this has been a good book. I'm vain enough to go on Amazon and read the reviews of the book, and whenever you write about women, I get a little nervous because you know how they can get. But it seems like mommies are really digging into this book and loving it. And so I'm happy to be helping moms figure out these weird people called their sons.
So why did you take this one on? Why? What is it about our culture that you felt this was important to write about?
Well, you know, I wrote the book, What a Difference a Daddy Makes in a Daughter's Life. But I think mommies feel like they don't have the effect upon their boys as they really do. I have a chapter in the book, Perry, called Planning Your Toddler's Wedding. And wow, does that get mommy's attention? What do you mean, planning my toddler's wedding? Well, ladies, you represent all of womanhood to this young boy. And if you want to do your future daughter-in-law a great service, hold that little sucker accountable. Now, ladies, you know that boys are, well, they're stupid, to put it bluntly. They do stupid things. They have peeing contests at age 8, 9, 10. Now, if you don't believe that, ask your husband. If you don't believe boys are stupid, call your insurance agent and ask them this. How come I pay so much money for my teenage boy to drive and I pay less for my daughter to drive? The answer is because boys are stupid. So mommies can impact their sons a lot. They can teach them an awful lot about life.
Is it true, Kevin, that boys have a tendency to gravitate more to their moms than their dads?
Sure. And look at any family where there's a locking of the horns. It's usually between mommy and daughter and daddy and son. So it's the cross-sexual relationships that really make a difference. In fact, I think some of your listeners and viewers might enjoy this one. I wrote the book, Have a New Husband by Friday.
Right.
And I always like to remind people that this is not a cash for clunkers program, okay? But in that book, I remind women to think of their husband as a 4-year-old that shaves. And there's not a man on this earth that likes to be asked questions by his wife, okay? So ladies, don't ask your husband's questions. Don't ask your son's questions. And put away the why word. The why word is a killer for men, but it's also a killer for kids. So mommies, you need to learn how to talk to your kids the way young boys want to be talked to. And it's not by grilling them with a bunch of questions.
All right, so how do they create this conversation and yet at the same time gain respect?
Well, a couple things. You know, a kid comes home excited. Now, he might be excited because he caught a salamander, okay, or a grasshopper. And if you ladies are anything like Mrs. Uppington, the woman I've lived with for 45 years, you're not real big on either of those creatures that God created.
Yeah.
But you need to get behind his eyes and share his enthusiasm and say simple things like, "Oh, honey, tell me more about that." Now, if you think about it, Perry, "tell me more about that" is a command, but it doesn't put up the defenses. Where if you said to a son, "Well, why did you bring that thing home?" You're done. He's not going to tell you a thing about that little find that he just found in the creek bed.
Wow. So when it comes to discipline, what role does a mom play with a son?
Well, big time. I don't think you can say, "wait till your father comes home." I think when two kids have dished a room that you spent 2 hours cleaning, you come in, I think you got to give your kids, the look, and then you have to say, I want you to know I am very unhappy with what just went down here. And turn your back and walk away. And people say, "well, what's that going to do?" Well, here's a secret in the book. Your son, mom, actually wants to please you. They don't like it when mama is unhappy. And as someone once said, when mama is unhappy, everybody's unhappy. So pulling the rug out, as I like to say, and letting the little buzzard tumble is a good thing for mom to do. When the 16-year-old goes off with his mouth at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and then he's looking for the car keys on Saturday night at 6 to go out, I think the smart mom, whether she's married or single, says, "honey, the car's not going anywhere, neither are you." "Well, what is wrong with you? Give me the keys." "Well, honey, I'm still working over the conversation I had with you this morning about 10 o'clock, and walk away.
Do you use the word no?
I call it vitamin N. I think kids need to have no, but don't overdo no, especially with young kids, Mom, because by the time your kid's 3, they'll be mother deaf to no. So if we're talking about the ankle biter battalion, Perry, pick up the little sucker, remove him from the scene, give him the look, but you don't always have to say the word no.
All right. Now, you mentioned earlier, Kevin, that the mom takes on the role potentially of the future wife. At what point does a young man begin to feel that understanding that mom is now potentially, well, he probably doesn't understand that real young, but beginning to create the environment that this is what womanhood is all about?
Well, I think it starts early. You know, it's not uncommon for little boys to say, "Mommy, I want to marry you," or "Mommy, I want to live next door to you when I get bigger." Okay? But this same little kid who crawls up in your arms and says such delightful things is the same kid at age 13 that looks at you, rolls his eyes, and says, "whatever." So I think as a mom, you need to ride through all those stages with that boy and let him know by way of empowerment. That's a big word today. A lot of those liberal folks that I'm not in love with use the word empowerment, but I think at the risk of an example, I'm going to use it. For the single mom, Perry, who's raising her sons by herself, she's got an 11-year-old and she needs a new car. I think the smart single mom says, "Honey, you know, Mom's clueless about cars, but you seem to like cars. Would you do me a big favor? Would you go on the internet and do some research for us? And I really need a car, you know, just a couple bells and whistles. I can't afford a lot, but I'm looking for a used car, low mileage. I'd love your recommendation." Well, what have you just done to this kid? You've empowered him. You say, "I care about what you think." Ask any preschool teacher, kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher, what will a child do to be the line leader in a classroom? Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term line leader gets up and selects which person or which row gets up to go out to recess or lunch first. I'm telling you, there are first graders up in the Rogue River Valley who would kill to be the line leader today.
All right. What role does the mom play in having that son respect the dad?
Well, number one, you got to remember that little Fletcher, that little son of yours, Mom, is looking up, and he's taking psychological, emotional, as well as spiritual notes, Perry, on how dad treats mom and how mom treats dad. There's a lot of women that cut the feet from underneath their husbands. And when kids see that, that puts the boy in a double bind and a love-hate relationship really quickly, because he wants to be protective of his father. He doesn't understand why his mom has given dad a cheap shot. So an admonition to all parents. I mean, again, I've written 41 books, but you'll see this theme in every book. Hey, parents, you need to be on the same page. No cheap shots. If you disagree with each other, do so behind closed door, so that you're not confusing your kids with one parent reacting one way and the other responding another.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I've heard your story, and you never thought you would mount to a whole bunch.
Well, nobody else did.
But your mom had faith in you, right?
Yes, she did, yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting story, because some people know that I graduated fourth in my class in high school, which sounds pretty good, but it was fourth in the bottom and not fourth in the top. So one of the funny moments in my life was when I got a call from my local high school that I grew up in and attended back in Williamsville, New York, outside of Buffalo, New York. And they said they wanted to put me on their Wall of Fame. Well, I just laughed. I mean, just the thought of me being on their Wall of Fame was funny. But anyway, there was a ceremony where they awarded me this honor, and I got to drive my mom, who lived to be 95 years of age,
wow,
up to the school, and we had a conversation like this. I said, "Well, Mom, we fooled a few people, didn't we?" And she said, "Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you." And I said, "Remember the night the cops brought me home?" And she said, "Oh, yes, I do. But you were such a good boy." And then I said, "Remember the time I got caught driving golf balls toward the New York State Thruway?" "Oh, yes, I do. But you were such a good boy." And all I could think of as I was sharing that was Paul's letter to the Italians in Romans 8:39 that says, "Nothing separates you from the love of Christ." And my mother was a champion, and she prayed for me every day, Perry. And we had a wall hanging in my room that I hated. And it said, "Only one life will soon be passed. Only what's done for Christ will last." And I was embarrassed to have that thing in my room. Well, I just repeated it for you, didn't I? Mm-hmm. And so for all those moms who are looking at the ceiling and looking at the crack in the wall at night and saying, is there any hope for my son? I hope that my life story will be an encouragement to many who are just sort of at the end of the rope wondering, when is the light going to go on? And the light didn't go on in my life till I was almost 22 years old, when I came to know who the Lord Jesus Christ was. And my life changed, and not because someone shared the 4 spiritual laws with me, but because someone loved me anyway. When Sandy, who was the instrument that God used to turn my whole life around, when she met me, I was a janitor. I had a chipped a hole in my front tooth. I had a cap tooth that had worn a hole in it. I smoked Salem cigarettes. I wore my belt on the side. I was a grease ball. And yet she saw something inside of me that was worth it.
Wow, what a story. Let me ask you this: as moms begin to progress this with their sons, and I can't help but think that the toughest job in the world is being a single mom raising a son, and especially if a marriage went bad. What can you say to a mom to balance those emotions in front of her son?
Well, a couple things. Number one, I think when a mom suddenly becomes single, and again, many single moms have never been married. You got to keep that in mind. The tendency is to go down and buy a hockey stick, a fishing pole, a football, and assume both roles. Don't do that, Mom. Just be a good mom. And a good mom disciplines their kid. A good mom says, "No, you're not going to talk to me like that." A good mom apologizes and said, "Would you forgive me? I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that." Most of us, especially people in the Christian community, know the story of Dr. Ben Carson, which I love that story because he and Curtis grew up in abject poverty in Detroit, Michigan. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Ben Carson is one of America's top pediatric neurosurgeons out at Johns Hopkins University. Well, anyway, his mom was a domestic. She cleaned other people's houses. And she gave both Curtis and Ben an assignment. And that assignment was every Friday to hand in 2 book reports to Mama Bear. Now, when Dr. Carson was in 6th grade, he discovered something interesting about Mama Bear, his mother, Sonia Carson. She was literate, Perry, and couldn't read. So is there hope for a single mom to create great kids? Absolutely. And with God's help, it can happen. But she cannot let guilt, and guilt is the propellant for most of the lousy decisions a single parent will make regarding their children.
What role does a mom play in her son's relationship about sex?
Oh, this is a great one. Okay. All right. Everybody who's watching, everyone who's listening, if you're a woman and you like to be grabbed by the man you love, put your hand up. See, I don't see one hand up, Perry. Women don't like to be grabbed. Men are world-class grabbers by their nature. We love to grab. You know, it's that bear-like quality that too many of us men have. But who better to teach a young man that women want to be talked to, listened to, appreciated, respected? So when it comes time for a kid to have the talk, and if there's a mommy and a son in that house, I would suggest that mommy talks to son and daddy talks to daughter. Now, there's a few things there that are very specific for women, young women. That dad might not be able to handle those boxes of all those things those women use. Mom can do that. But again, dad is in a great perspective to share with his daughter how men view women. Mom is in a great position to say, hey, listen, if you like this girl, I'm glad you like this girl. That's a healthy thing. But don't make a fool of yourself in front of her, and don't punch her in the shoulder or pull her hair or do some other stupid things. That's what boys do. Why does the cute sophomore girl date the senior in high school? Why? Because boys are stupid. And they grow up slower than girls. So girls are attracted to boys who are a couple years older because they have more maturity. So mom is in a unique position, I think, to teach her son about modesty, about keeping his hands to himself, about really respecting and appreciating women. And it all starts in the home with you, Mom.
What part does mom play in disciplining her son?
Big time. Again, I think in this day and age, when things happen, you need to deal with it. Now, does that mean you always have to deal with it immediately? No. Again, sometimes kids will say something very disrespectful at age 9 or 10, and then they want to be driven someplace at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And let him figure out that mom's not a happy camper. I think mom ought to become distant, quiet. Let him figure out that maybe something's wrong. Mom, would you get me a glass of milk? Oh, no, honey, I don't feel like getting a glass of milk right now. Mommy, would you turn the TV on for me? No, honey, I don't feel like doing that right now. Now, after a few of those, I don't feel like it, that kid's going to come and say, hey, what's going on? Well, I'll tell you the truth, honey, mom's not happy. Wow. Oh, why aren't you happy? I'm not happy because I don't like the way you've been talking to me today. And turn your back and walk away. Now, I always say turn your back and walk away because I want mom to see that the son's going to follow you. He wants to find resolution to this problem. He doesn't like it when mom's upset. So don't be afraid, mom, to just look your kid in the eye and say, hey, I am not happy. What's happening here?
What can you say to moms that are dealing with maybe the teenage years? I mean, they do come to an end, but you think like it's eternity.
Yeah, well, teenagers are weird, let's face it. I mean, the simple questions like, what are we having for dinner tonight, Mom? And Mom says chicken. Oh, chicken! I hate chicken! Oh, gross, you know I hate chicken. and 3 nights earlier, the same kid, had 3 helpings of chicken.
Yeah.
You have to understand the nature of the beast. And I tell parents of teenagers, You need to be the semi-straight line in this kid's life, not the straight line, okay? Because kids, their line during the teenage years, which runs about 11 through 22, their line is more like a seismograph on a bad day in Southern California.
Wow.
They're all over the place. And so don't get blown out. When that kid slams a door, for example, if I'm the parent, if I'm the mom, I'm going to say, honey, excuse me, just what did that door slam mean? Did that mean you're sick of living in this 4-bedroom home with all the amenities of life? Or if they roll their eyes or something like that, rather than say, don't you dare roll your eyes in this house, young man. You'd be so smart, Mom, just to say, oh, honey, would you do that again? Only do it in slow motion. Oh, that was cool. In other words, learn, parent, to remove your sails from your child's wind. Because these kids, I'm telling you, half the time they're just pulling our chain. They're just throwing it out there to see if we're going to act like an idiot or like a responsible person.
Kevin, you're a delight. Thank you, my friend. I just want to let you know that we had a great salmon season. Didn't see you for that one, but the steelhead are in the river, and they're good size this year. Hopefully you can sneak away.
Well, I'd love to get up there. That is purely God's country, and as you know, I love you and your bride, and it'd be interesting for you to give that test to your bride tonight about her influence on those boys.
Yeah, I will. Hey, thank you, my friend. God bless you. Best to you and Sandy. And how many grandchildren now?
2, still 2. We're stuck on 2. I'm telling you, these kids need to be more procreative. Gotta be like your old man.
I'll let you.
Have one at 50.
Hey, have them read some of your books, will you?
Yeah, they should. Okay, Perry. God bless you.
God bless you, pal. All right.